Welcome to a new episode of TTG Conversations 5 Questions video series. I'm Karen Yu, Group Editor of TTG Asia Media. In this episode, we will find out how escorted tours are changing post-pandemic. And to take us through this topic is Anthony Lim, Asia President of the Travel Corporation. Now, he holds a dual role with his other title being Managing Director Asia for Insight Vacations and Luxury Gold. Now, Anthony oversees the regional business operations for a vast portfolio of brands including Trafalgar, Kontiki Holidays, Cost Saver, AAT Kings, Uni World Boutique, River Cruise Collection, Inspiring Journeys, and Red Carnation Boutique Hotel Collection. It's a lot of brands under the Travel Corporation, yeah, Anthony?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, and so that makes you the perfect person to talk about the post-pandemic escorted tours and the future of that. Thank you and welcome to the show, Anthony.
Well, thank you very much, Karen, for having me here on the show over here. And I'm delighted actually to share and to speak with you and the rest of all the audience. Thanks.
Great. I've got 5 questions for you, and here's the first. The pandemic has put a fear of crowds in people, and the tourism industry professionals have warned that group tours will be a thing of the past. What are your thoughts about that?
Okay, this actually is a very good question. I think during the pandemic time, where people are able to travel freely without any restrictions, and hesitation to explore the new destination by themselves, and also more airlines actually operated into the new destinations where we can pack our bag and travel within the next hours. I think at that time, which is actually during the pre-pandemic time, they're seeing some of the pressure on the group tours demand, where people are able to explore by themselves, go by free and easy and FIT travelers, right? But then it might not be the case now in the post-pandemic world. This pandemic actually have changed the way that we travel, and also the travel restrictions of the local so-called the regulations imposed by the respective government, and people actually that may also develop the high cabin fever over the last 15 months, and also we should travel with more cautious, and also about the regulation that how to travel in a new norm. And then after that, we are actually also expecting the demand for the group tour will be growing higher than ever before, in particular in the small groups and also with a smaller group departure where people wish to form their own travel bubbles. And in particularly that they need to travel in a more protected environment. And they're also able to, and most importantly, is actually the peace of mind, where people will travel in the same group and wonder, with a so-called a group of like-minded people from the start until to the finish. Now, group tour travel has been also able to reduce the uncertainty, doubtful of their own decisions, fear of exploring the new destinations, and also time spent in self-planning and follow up with the latest travels regulations changing. It's been so rapidly changed almost every day. And there is also a great sense of comfort when traveling in the group tour, where the guest actually well-being is all taken care of. So, hence I won't see that, that is so-called that, the demand will be less, but in fact that there's a huge opportunity and also the demand for the group tours in the post-pandemic world.
That's good to know, Anthony. Very good to know. Now, the Travel Corporation has several brands that are built on bringing people together to collectively enjoy destinations and experiences, right? So how will touring operations change in the post-pandemic world?
To prepare for the new world of travel, for the travel corporations or the Insight Vacations, we actually work very closely with the World Travel and the Tourism Council, which is the WTTC, and also with the World Health Organizations, WHO, to develop the well-being protocol and also the hygiene standard, along with the new normal, safe and seamless travel journey as a global protocol itself. Now, our operational team in London and the US is actually gearing up now and always have the latest knowledge and about the travel updates on the ground. And this actually is very new for the operational team, and where the individual members have been assigned with 1 or 2 countries to monitor the local government or the health authority regulation updates, and just want to make sure that our guests actually receive the latest info and prep them for the trips at a peace of mind. And such as whether they require, for example, the PCR test, like how many hours before departure, or what to need to do actually upon arrival and the follow-up. And we will make sure that our guests actually receive the latest requirements and the protocol so that they can simply enjoy the trip without any worries. And we also introduce, for example, the well-being directors on board on every departure with more than 20 guests to assist our travel directors and the drivers on the road. And the well-being director is responsible for the quality assurance of the hotels, the restaurants, and also the venues where the guest is visiting during the day, each of the journey. Now, this quality check is very much important during the post-pandemic world. It's just to ensure that all our travel partners is actually meet the local regulations and established by our TTC, the WTTC, or the WHO, the Wellbeing Protocol. And also that, on the motor coach itself, we actually equip with an air filter that actually, that inspect and clean up on the daily basis. And that is actually that, will be the onboard, the so-called the filter, will be helped to purify the air for the guests. Just a little bit of the so-called the hint on that is, the filter actually changes the air inside the coach is actually every 2 to 3 minutes, which is actually faster than the normal hospital operating theatre, which is actually mandated in the 3 to 4 minutes. So actually our filtration system is much more effective and efficient in a way that to keep the air clean on board for that. And also another important point is actually that when people actually travel in the groups, whether it be inside vacation or luxury gold programs, they actually have the priority access into the landmark site where they don't have to actually join the long snake queue, with the general public. And this also is actually very much important actually at the new norm, where the guests actually can skip the queue and to have a greatest opportunity to maintain the physical distance and also for the sightseeing. Now, we implement, for example, the smaller groups departure and our unique reconfigured the coach with the new fewer seats actually on board. And guests actually can be travel as part of the so-called the social travel bubbles and also able to maintain the physical distance and benefit more on the personal space, right? So the regulation actually changed so rapid. And I have to say that, we are still continuously learning actually in order to make sure that we are able to deliver a safe travel environment for our guests. So as compared to the so-called, the group tour itself, it's definitely, it play a very vital role in the coming post-pandemic world.
Okay. There are studies that show, travelers' stronger preference for less crowded destinations post-pandemic. So how are such travel intentions impacting the travel corporation's current and future itineraries? Will there be actually fewer itineraries that cover popular tourist cities and more that go into lesser-known areas, for example?
Yeah, okay. The pandemic actually changed the way we travel, as earlier mentioned itself, and how we actually see the beauty of the destinations. I totally agree with you that more and more people are preferred for the less crowded destinations when they travel in a new norm. But so far, there is no standard travel policy and to be adopted globally. So each of the country may impose their own travel regulations and policy, which may pose a challenge for the people actually who wish to travel and with the multiple countries in a very single journey. All right. So therefore, the mono countries programs will be a much more preferred choice for the travelers now. All right. As more and more countries are opening up, of course, and now we speak now, and they're trying to actually establish their own so-called the average or the airlink, we're going to call it. And this will give the opportunity for the multiple destination materialize in the near future. But at the TTC or the travel corporations, we always have the different travel style actually that make available for our guests all these years. And we have, for example, the country road or the easy pace and the regional journey or the discovery journey. Now, our mono country or the easy pace or the country road itinerary, that is actually cover the off-beaten track, which is actually we delve deeper into the country cultures and also the history by visiting the place, which actually with the fewer tourists, get to see. And we also actually got off to the well-trodden tourist path and visit the hidden retreat. And this actually will be perfect fit for the current travel demand. Like recently, actually, we operated a few departures to Egypt, Iceland, and the US National Park. And more, of course, the definite departure like Italy, Croatia, Greece, and France is in the planning and in the progress and upcoming. Now, guests really actually that wanted to go to a place that actually where there's outdoor-oriented destinations where they can actually relax, explore with a kind of a wide open space where, for example, the national park and the Iceland is really beautiful, for them to really enjoy. Now, at our travel corporations, to be very honest, we are not short of any itinerary of choices. In fact, that we are really exciting that one of our brand Inside Vacation actually we launched new itinerary for 2022, like the country route or Andalusia, Spain. We have an island tour, we have a Peru, and we also have Hawaii up and coming. So you can imagine that, it's like not only that we are saying that we are cutting down, but in fact, we are actually that, introduce more itinerary for our guests that we know this is something that where the demand is up and coming for us.
Mhm. Okay. Can technology help with travelers' strong desire for contactless interaction and safe distancing during sightseeing? How is the company working with technology?
Absolutely. I think that moving forward, that we are using actually that we need to actually use more technologies to complement the travel in a new norm. All right. I think that over the last 15 months, we actually invested in our own so-called, for example, that My Insight Travel Portal, and this is actually that we enhance the travel portal. Is actually the electronic travel portal platforms, which is actually allow our guests to communicate with our travel director ahead of the tour. So that actually they can tailor make, for example, the special interest, their need, dietary, and everything, and also sharing the emergency contact and important details, in a very secure and electronic way. And also, there's no paperwork needed actually to fill when they arrive on the trip itself. And when the guests actually on the road, they can actually access to the itinerary, which is actually on the travel portal through their smartphone, or they can actually download the e-documents actually that where we encourage them not to print out any more paper documents from there. Yeah, and we also actually adopted another so-called the system called the Sherpa, and this actually is for our guest guide and to be getting the right travel documentation and the understanding or up to date of the travel requirement. It's very easy for them to navigate, and guests actually can find it on our website by pointing. There's a world map actually. They can point on the cursor onto any part of the country, and then after that, all they wish to know about the country information will be all surfaced. So guests will be able to find out, for example, the travel rules by the destinations and the return routes actually provided seamless way, for them. Also able to submit the e-visa, and that is actually that. It's also help us to manage our operational risk, notifying the customer or the potential trip disruptions, and such as increase the border restriction or there's any new testing or quarantine measure that has been required, right? And of course, that when the guests they go on the trip, we give the guests we provide them with their own sanitized headset, and also there's a box and to be used throughout the whole trip. And that is actually that for allowing them to be able to have that kind of distancing, but without compromising the sightseeing experience. So the travel director will be still able to communicate with them while the guests actually can move a bit freely, within their own travel bubbles. Yeah.
You mentioned Voxbox, so that's the Vox tours with the remote
yes,
tour
the
guide,
remote,
right? That's the one.
yeah, exactly, the remote one. Because unlike in the olden days, people are using the loud hailer, or the tour guide will actually use the one small so-called like the speaker tied onto the belt, So this one is no longer that already. So it's very much it's like Voxbox. Like now I'm talking to you. So basically the earpiece on my ear, and then I can listen to what is actually your commentations about, the destination itself to share about the interest part. Yeah. So that is actually something which is very, very unique for the guests.
Wonderful. Okay, will technology take the warmth and hospitality away from escorted tours? How can tour designers and operators ensure that the luxury of human touch and attention remains post-pandemic?
Before the pandemic, as I mentioned that, some people may have the reluctant to adopt the technologies, where they actually don't think that there's a need to adopt it for some of the people, right? The pandemic have changed us in the last 15 months, the way we live, the way we work. In fact, it also push or force us to adopt technology now. For example, now we have a conversation instead of face-to-face, now become a Zoom call over here, right? Technology also that should be a great complement to be escorted tour planning. And so far, I don't really see that, it actually take away the warm and hospitality way of the escorted tour. As what I earlier mentioned, like before the guest departure, we actually connect with the guests on the virtual basis, and in a way that we also to do the pre-departure briefing at their own comfort and the timing. So which means that they can do it at home. They don't have to be like come to the agency and then to do the updates. And then with our so-called the travel portals, which also allowed them to communicate with a travel director ahead of time, right? And also that the Sherpa is actually earlier mentioned is able to provide all the travel documents, the understanding of the up-to-date travel requirement of the country itself, where the guests can find. And of course, the guests can still reach out to our call center for any other assistance if they need to. But of course, they can navigate it at their own comfort at home if they find that the information is useful to them. And of course, during the tour, earlier on mentioned about the Voxbox, it's also come into handy where that is actually maintain the distancing, while actually that, it's a kind of comfort for the guests. And I also noticed that when we go for the tour, nowadays, more and more guests actually that pretty much, I would say, that tech savvy. And some of them actually, they use the GPS. And to learn more about the journey they are about to travel, like from point A to point B, what is actually the length of the travel time, how long would it take, and everything. And along the way, you pass by, for example, those are the small towns and everything. And they actually that create that kind of high interactions with the travel directors. So in that case, that we can also notice that, the guests actually nowadays wanted to know more. So they raise questions. Actually, that's indirectly actually created a very strong bonding between the guests and the travel directors to learn about that. So the technology-wise is basically, I would say that it's a great compliment in that way, right? And of course, that we are not short of so-called that only depend on the technology, where we also, for example, inputted our so-called that the well-being directors to look after our guests. So in addition to the travel director and the drivers. So that is actually the added additional so-called layer of the human touch to the guests, especially in the post-pandemic time, right? So technology-wise, definitely it's not taking the warmth away from the escorted tour, but it certainly helped actually to improve the engagement with our guests, and it actually make it more efficient and also like more effectively for us to actually to do the planning and the comfort of the guests when they're actually on the journey itself.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Anthony. That's all the 5 questions I have for you. Thank you for giving us your time.
Thank you very much, Karen, for having me here, and certainly look forward for us to chat again. If any
and meet in person.
Thank you. Yes.
All right, then to everyone, take care, stay safe. I'll see you on the next episode. Goodbye.